Hey bitches, it's a guy, a car, and a podcast.
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 Buckle up.
Buckle the fuck up.
Buckle up.
Better fucking buckle up.
I had talked about doing a podcast a long time ago, and then I
What's a long time ago?
Like, before I met Jeremy.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But then, I just never really,
Did it?
No, I just never really, because I kept thinking about, what I wanted to do it about, and then I listened to these other podcasts, and I'm didn't really just ever commit to anything. And then I was so sad. I was going to do a Joss Whedon podcast, and I was going to do, I was going to make Jeremy watch Buffy with me, because he's never watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And,
wow.
But he wouldn't watch Buffy with me, and I'm like, how are we going to do a Joss Whedon podcast if you won't watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer? And so, yeah. So that was it. So,
my girlfriend, I've been dating a girl for 4 or 5 months. Her dog is named Buffy because she's a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer
that's awesome.
fan.
Okay, she and I are going to do a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast.
Please talk her into that.
Oh shit, I forgot there is no getting out that way.
Apparently not.
Forgot where I'm going. Okay. No, they just had it closed off for the last 2 days.
Oh wow.
America. Sorry, I just keep seeing those flags around. I think it's funny. Oh. So anyway.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Just that's the weird part about doing this in a car is I want to talk to you. I want to pick your brain. I also don't want to distract you from
driving
traffic. So I'm waiting until I'm like, okay, she's good.
Okay, I'm good. I'm focused.
She's fine. We're fine.
We're fine. Everything's fine here. How are you?
And this is, you did the thing that I feel like I'm always trying to do to people who come on the podcast, which is to completely drag me out of where my head was at.
Oh, yeah.
I was just like, all right, we got to get it set up. We got to find a nice place to sit down in the house. And I come in and you're just like, let's get coffee. I'm like, oh, all right. I haven't done this with this whole game. I just was already in producer problem solving mode where I'm like, how do I make this work? And
you gotta think on your
it.
toes, yeah.
So proud of us.
Yeah. Well, I was looking around the house and I was like, okay, we could do this in Jeremy has got his little studio thing where you guys did your thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, but he has all this shit everywhere right now. So it's like, well, are you going to clean it up? Or are you going to do it? And he's like, I'll get it, no problem. And then I was like, we just do it out here. But then he's like, oh, I'm going to watch the race. And then his mom's in town.
He's
and
taking over your whole house.
It's his house too, but it's then my in-laws are in town for NASCAR. And so I didn't want to kick anybody else out. So I was like, I'm going to kick us out. Well, then I've been telling Jeremy, I'm like, I want to go to Black Cat Coffee, which is in Arcadia.
I've never even heard of it.
It's
I'm over there all the time.
tiny little place. It's in the Safeway. I don't know, my ex-boyfriend used to take me there because it was right near his house. And then I loved it, but it's so far away. And I literally, a long time ago, before I met Jeremy, I used to just drive out there. And I'm like, it's my day off. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. And I drive 40 minutes to get a cup of coffee.
So is there something special about the coffee?
It's good. I don't know. I just like it. Sometimes I just like to drive, too.
I love driving.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
It's so fun.
Which I don't know why, because I was actually thinking about this recently. Driving is the most consistently stressful thing you can do.
Oh, exactly.
In the way that your body is on constant alert for however long until you put the thing in park.
Exactly.
But in a similar vein to video games, that's fun.
It's also because you get into this, you're doing the same repetitive thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, you ever get that, like, where you're like, how did I get here? You're like, I know I was paying attention. I know I've been, like, following the rules of the road, but it's like, shit, where have I been this last 5 minutes? Because you're listening to the radio and you're watching things and you're talking to somebody and you're like, oh.
I have this friend that's
just me.
way deep in holistic healing and stuff. She talks a lot about that, about presence, where she's just like, driving is such a nightmare place to be present because it's too easy to drift off in your thoughts, and then before you know it, you've driven 20 miles and you don't remember any of it. And it's not that you weren't conscious, and it's not that you weren't paying attention to traffic, but your mind was elsewhere. And she's like, in the vein that our happiness, the power of now and stuff is in the present moment, like driving is just not. But I also wonder if that's why I like it so much, because in a weird way, it's a place that I don't have to be there. I can be behind the wheel. I can be paying attention to traffic. But because traffic is mostly mundane, I mean,
It's
a
the
kid's
same
not going to
kind of
run out
thing,
and I'm going to have to, like, swerve. Like, that just happens so rarely that I can just zone out. It's like, it's meditation in a weird way for me.
I listen to a lot of, like, either music or podcasts a lot, but I just kind of, like, that was always my me time, because, like, especially, like, since I met Jeremy, it's like, we used to live out in Mesa, but I got a job out here, and so it was a lot of, like, commuting was just, like, that was when I was, like, when I'm in the car, that was, like, I'm singing or I'm doing something or I'm, listening to podcasts or whatever, and then when I'm home and I'm focused and present, but it's, like, I didn't want to be doing that stuff when I was at home.
That's a good point. Like, when vehicles became the best boombox you've ever had, that's the only place I want to be. It's got the best system.
It's got your sound system. It's got everything.
It's great.
Exactly.
And I mean, in that vein, I don't know. There's so many things I want to talk to you about. So you keep mentioning, like, when you met Jeremy. I don't know either of you prior to either of you. So I just know you as a unit. Like,
yeah.
And the whole reason you're on this podcast is because I posted this meme and you like emotionally responded to it. I'm like, oh, we got to talk about that. But
I just emotionally threw up on you.
It was. If that's emotional throw up, I wish people would do it more often. I just want to be covered in people's emotional vomit.
What's funny is I don't Instagram. I don't social media a lot, and like lately, everybody's been so like with their feelings about the election and everything, and I'm like, I don't want to get into that, but it's like just everybody's been so like this year's been so like aggressive.
Yes. That
usually I'm just like, I'm just gonna keep to myself, and like your life doesn't affect me, mine doesn't affect yours, so I'm just gonna keep to myself. And then I saw your post, and what did it say? It was like something.
It was from The Village. Yeah, it's the scene where Bryce Dallas, I can't remember the character's names right now. She's sitting next to Joaquin Phoenix, and she's basically confronting him about how she figured out he's in love with her. And the way she said that she noticed it is when they were younger, he used to hold her arm when she would walk places, and then at some point he just stopped. And she said, I even tripped in your presence one time on purpose just to see if you would, and you didn't. And she said, sometimes we don't do things because we don't want people to know that we want to do them.
Yeah. See, and I remember like when I was growing up, so like, because my response to you was basically like, I stopped doing that a few years ago because it wasn't making me happy, because I didn't want to. I was living my life for everybody else, and I was realizing I wasn't living my life for me.
So what does that look like? Are you talking about like making your parents happy, making your siblings
everybody happy? Yeah, I was worried about what I was gonna say, to my friends or to
Did you grow up like conservative or something, where like the things you were saying or thinking were, I don't know, important to your social structure?
Not really, but it was like I could always just, it's like the way that people react to things is like, oh, well, I shouldn't feel that way or I shouldn't act that way.
Oh, so they were like telling you how to think about it.
Yeah, and it was like growing up, I remember I always liked to, my dad used to work on cars, and I was really into it, and he would teach me some stuff, but then I kind of realized, like, people would tell me, like, oh, well, girls don't work on cars, and I'm like, why not? Like, I liked my race cars, and I liked stuff like that, but it was like, and not to get into the whole, like, patriarchy, whatever, but it was like, it was a lot of that stuff where it was like, well, girls shouldn't do that. I was like, why? And then I remember, like, when I got to college, it was the, sorry, I'm trying to fix the temperature. I'm like, it's too cold and that's too warm. You can adjust it. But then I remember getting to college, and I was really interested in psychology, and my psych teacher was like, oh, well, it's really hard to get into, and it's really, like, kind of freaky, so you probably shouldn't do it. And I was like, you're, like, my Psych 101 teacher, and you're telling me that I shouldn't be interested in something that I'm deeply interested in because it's probably not a good career choice. And I'm like, it's like every little thing. It was like, so I never knew what I wanted to do, and I don't know, it was just like, it was always, I felt like people were always telling me, like, oh, you shouldn't do this, and I'm like, why do you care? Like, a lot of, like, when I was in school, I was thinking about this story the other day, and this girl and I are still friends on Instagram, and I kind of think about it every once in a while. I remember one day in high school, she had asked me, she's like, what are you? And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, because I used to go to the thrift store, and I'd buy, you know, whatever I wanted to wear, or however I wanted to express myself. So sometimes I was very, like, preppy, and, you know, I'd wear flowers and, you know, a little, I don't know, whatever. And then some days I was very goth, and I would wear, like, all black and a dog collar. And she was like, what are you, like, what are you a poser? Are you trying to look like me today? And I'm like, no, I just wanted to wear this today. And then I realized, like, she was one of those girls that had the exact same haircut as all the other girls, like that bob haircut with the spikes in the back.
Yes.
Like, do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all of them had the exact same haircut. They all dressed exactly the same. I'm like, I never understood that. I'm like, am I supposed to do that? Like, I don't know. And my mom always just taught me to, you know, be yourself and be kind to people. But I think there was this day that I remember there was this girl that I worked with, and she was like, Cassie, you're so weird. Like, why are you so weird? And I just kind of laughed, and I was like, why are you boring? And I was like, oh, really? I didn't mean to say it like that.
Nailed it.
But it was just like that, like, what do you want from me? Like, I'm just being myself. And
So how do you, I mean, I guess I did my share of code switching as a kid, but I think I really just switched between, you know, sort of preppy conservative Mormon kid and what we call dirt heads, which were just the long-haired alternative rock kids. And I guess there was a little bit of skater in that, but I think they kind of, I'm saying, this is a classic example of me, like, my code switching anymore is years at a time. I'll just really commit to an image for a good couple of years, and then when I don't feel in my skin anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, all right, change it. Let's do something different. But that also then affects even my behavior. I think I talk a little dirtier and grittier when I look like this. I think I'm interested in, I don't know, just more sultry. I don't know. I'm just a lot more of a pleasure-based human being when I go with, like, sort of the rock look versus when I clean it all up. I think I'm more dedicated at work, and I think I get home and I clean more often for some weird reason, and it's a whole different version of me.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, like, you're a different person from day to day. Like, the base of you is still there, but it's like little things, like, make a totally different person from day to day, and you can't always be expected to like the same things or do the same things. Like, sometimes Jeremy will say, like, oh, this is your favorite chord, and I'm like, no, I don't like that. And, like, there's the songs that he's like, oh, you like this song? And I'm like, no, I don't really like it. And he's like, I thought you liked this though. And I was like, yeah, it's okay. And I was like, I don't really like it today.
Which has to be interesting for your guys' relationship, because on the good side, I find Jeremy to be very attention deficit, very just creative, and just sort of always on to the next thing, which seems like it would work well for that. However, I imagine that what you just described means that a healthy relationship with you, romantically speaking, means he's got to pay a lot of attention.
He says that.
And so if you have a deficit in that category of being attention deficit, it seems like that would be, it's like sometimes it's amazing, and other times you're just like, I just can't with you right now, Jeremy. Like, I need things from you, and I don't even know if you're capable of giving them to me.
Well, we're not like that different. It's like your taste might change, but it's like I said, you're still the same core person that you always are. But yeah, it's like, but you're gonna pay attention to your significant other, and you're gonna like, oh, something's different today, you know, like. But that's when you talk. Like, we spend every single day together, and we're like, you know, there's always something a little bit new and something different to talk about, and you're not always going to talk about the same things or like the same things, and I don't know, I think we challenge each other, and I don't know, yeah, it's just, but yeah, it's not like we're like totally different people every day. I just meant your tastes and stuff.
So, back to you in your childhood. So you're just
back to progress to your childhood.
Because I mean, on some level, I like to try to have kind of a chronology with each person, but bouncing around is fine too. So you're a kid, and you, as I understood what you just said, you're kind of interested in all of it. There's some days you feel like you're a cheerleader, and there's some days you feel like you're a goth, and there's some days I
just feel like expressing myself the way I want to express myself at the time. And
so is it more like acting? You just like kind of putting on a role and just kind of living in the skin of that role for...
No, I just feel like some days you want, like today I was like, I wanted to wear what I wanted to wear, and then like earlier I was wearing like this kind of black eyeshadow makeup, and then I'm like, I don't really feel like wearing that today, and took it off, and I just kind of threw this on, and I was like, just change your mind. I don't know.
That's interesting.
I think just people change your mind, but I don't know, it's like, but I always thought that people wanted you to be something. It's like, why do I have to fit into your box? And,
well, there's something to be said for predictability.
yeah.
For example, in relationships, I think if my partner was changing every single day, I think it would stress me out. I think there's something about some degree of, I know that I'm going to get 70% of this,
Right.
and this every single day, because that's who that person is. So you can kind of acclimate to it and learn how to, you know, give to it.
Like, what I was really talking about in my response to you, my whole thing was really that whole, the 6 years ago or 7 years ago, whatever, when I decided that I was going to be happy for myself and all that stuff. It wasn't really about, like, because this is, like, more just superficial, like, kind of, like, that was more, like, clothes and what I feel like doing today, or what I feel like, you know, but I think more of that was just, like, I was in really, you know, crappy relationships in the past, and then it's, like, I decided, I'm like, well, what makes me happy? What am I getting out of these relationships with my friends or with boyfriends or whatever that aren't making me happy, and why am I doing this?
Out of curiosity, assuming that most of those crappy relationships were kind of the same, because most of us tend to kind of repeat the same mistakes when you're younger, what, at least from your own observational standpoint, what did men seem to want from you back then?
Well, I feel like a lot of that was, like, the guys I was dating were very, like, I think they picked up on that I was such a person that would, like, take care of you, or to, like, you know, like, oh, you need, like, my last boyfriend before Jeremy, like, my last serious boyfriend, I was like, he would ask, like, hey, can you pay the rent? Hey, can you, like, you know, he was always concerned about, you know, his finances and everything, but it was like, he didn't really respect mine. But I would just do it, because I'm like, oh, yeah, you want to go out to eat? Sure. Like, not that, like, oh, maybe we should, like, not go out to eat every day, and maybe we shouldn't do this. And he's like, but he would take advantage of that. And I think, like, a few relationships back, it's like, a lot of them kind of did that, where they're like, oh, she's gonna take me out to eat all the time? Cool. Like, she's gonna, like, buy me shit? Cool. Wow. And it's like, I don't know if they intended on that. Like, I don't think they were bad people, but I just think they were bad boyfriends. Like, I don't think they realized that they were being kind of selfish, and I feel like after a while, it's like, I realized, it's like, oh, I'm not getting anything out of this, not even, like, financially, or like, but there's no stability to it. There's no, like, it's like, why do I want to hang out with people that just want me to do things for them? Like, there's a give and take to relationships, but like with Jeremy, I don't have that. He's like, I never feel like he's taking advantage of me. I never feel like he'll tell me, I'm like, hey, do you want to go stop and have like food? And he's like, oh, we got food at home. I'm like, it's fine. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, you really want this? And he's like, no. Like, even today, I'm like, do you want anything? And today he's like, you want to bring me a burger on the way back? But he'd never be like, you need to bring me food. And I feel like the people I've dated in the past were like, you need to do this, or like, it was that almost like that, like the balance of your relationship kind of hanged on like what you do for me instead of like what our relationship was. That makes sense.
Very much. So, I mean, Jeremy on his episode of the pod, we talked a little bit about him meeting you and that transition.
Yeah.
Your side of the story. Where were you at? Like, how single had you been by the time you met Jeremy? When was the end of the last relationship?
So that was like, I want to say it was like January. I mean, it was before that. We had, so my last serious boyfriend, it was January, I think 2014 when we officially like broke up. So it was about almost a year before I met Jeremy. But Jeremy and I, so the last boyfriend, Josh, he and I had like dated off and on, and then when we were in one of those off periods, Jeremy and I had actually messaged each other on one of those like the Plenty of Fish or something like that. And yeah, because we weren't dating anything, but it was right when he was dealing with. See, I think timing is everything.
Yes.
And I've never had good timing with people, but I always just accepted everybody else's like, oh well, they want to be in a relationship or they want to date, so I'm just gonna do it, even though I knew that wasn't what I wanted. Yeah. But with Jeremy, actually, like, he and I messaged each other. I think we were talking about Doctor Who. Oh, it's really funny. I don't know if he told you this, but I ghosted him, and unintentionally, but I was just looking at this guy, and I'm like, I really like this guy, but I'm not in a place right now to be in a relationship. And my mom was teasing me a lot, and she kept calling me the heartbreaker because I would go out with these guys, and I'm like, I'm not ready for a relationship. And they're like, for some reason, like, you tell a guy, like, so I feel like normally if you go out with a guy and you're like, oh, I want a relationship, they're like, oh, whoa. But then if you say like, hey, I'm not really looking for anything serious right now, I just want to like get to know you, they're like, why would you be my girlfriend? And I had a few guys like that, and I was like, dude, if we're in a relationship and we break up, that's a little bit more serious, like, than like, hey, we were just hanging out, getting to know each other, and then it just didn't work out. And so I kept like, I went out with a few guys, and I was like, I just wasn't ready for a relationship, and so I was hurting people. And
I'm way too codependent for that. Like, I need it to be moving towards something.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, but I wanted to get to know a person before I committed to that person. Like, it wasn't just dating around. I'm like, I want to get to know you as a human being first. And so with Jeremy, I had, like, he was just, like, I think this was back when he didn't have his daughter. Like, I think he was, like, just getting, like, he was in that kind of depression. And he was just kind of getting out to, like, get to know people. And we had started talking, and then I was just getting out of a relationship with my ex. And so it was like, neither one of us were in a place for that relationship. And I remember I was looking through his Instagram, and I was like, oh, he's got a daughter, he's got this whole life, and I'm like, I don't want to hurt this guy. Like, I like this guy, but I don't want to pull him into what I'm feeling right now. And so we added each other on Instagram, and like, we were friends on there. But then I think the last thing we said to each other was like, he was asking me about Doctor Who, and to him, he thought that because he didn't know about Doctor Who, that I didn't want to date him, which was not the case. I was like, I had a more serious, like, oh, I don't want to hurt this person. He seems like a really nice guy. And so I just kind of like stopped responding. And then I still followed him on Instagram, and I don't know if I had lost his number or something, but then it was like, then I think at that point I had gotten it back together with Josh, and I think like, I can't remember the timeline exactly, but Jeremy and I were friends on Instagram for like a few years before we actually met. He likes to say that he stalked me on there. I stalked him too. Like, I remember we'd comment on each other's stuff, and like, we always had a lot in common on there. But anyway, so then the last boyfriend though, he moved to Seattle, And instead of me taking that as a big red flag of like, okay, this boy that you're with would rather live in Seattle and not take you with him. It's like girls, like, in your own, like, trying to cover things up. You're like, oh, well, he wants me to go with him, but he didn't ask me to. And like, oh, like, this is gonna work out. It's fine. We could do a long distance thing. He's just doing this for, you know, for him. And then I'm like, and it took me a minute to go like, oh, no, this is not gonna work out. And, but I guess he was still, like, calling me every day, and he was still, like, because he still got something out of it. He still got that attention and that love from me.
The Seattle boyfriend?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so he
Meaning
was, like,
he moved and didn't break up with you? He
yeah,
was like,
exactly.
oh, we're still together.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just in a different state.
Exactly.
Is that fine?
And then we would talk, because I had already wanted to go to Seattle anyway. And so I was like, oh, well, if I move there, it's not moving for you. It was moving for me, and you just happen to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I'm like, oh, if, you know, if something happened, like if we broke up or anything, like, oh, I could still function as a human being, and I could still enjoy my life there. And so I remember we were, like, talking about me coming out there. And he's like, yeah, you should come visit me. It'll be great. And he was all excited about it. Or at least from my perspective. I don't know. It might have been totally different from his perspective. But he ended up, like, had a feeling that things were, like, a little off. But instead of just breaking up with me before I spent the money to go on a, you know, $400 plane ticket to Seattle, he was like, I got there and it was like nothing had changed. Like we had we're back to like, oh, this is a relationship again, and you know, we're all happy. Wow. And then I could tell that there was something, like he felt guilty about something. And I found out later he had another girlfriend. And
the whole time? The
whole time, yeah. He had like met this girl. I don't know if they were like dating or if they were just like if they were actually in a relationship, but I was like, you could have just told. Well,
all of us.
Terrible. Yeah.
Come on.
But it was like, instead of just saying like he took me out there, and then I think in the middle of the trip, it was like 2 days before I was supposed to go back, he was like, yeah, I don't want to lead you on, and I like don't want to date you, and I thought we did break up, but I was like, I think I'd remember that. So it was like, am I projecting things? Like, am I crazy? And I think that's what he liked to, like, oh no, you're just crazy. You're like, maybe, but like, I think I remember that.
And all that happened in Seattle?
In Seattle,
so then you're just in a faraway land and
I'm
absorbing
there,
all this.
And I'm like crying at at his apartment. I'm like, why did you have to do this now? Like, you could have done this at home. And it was super like awkward. And now I'm trying to remember where we're going for the coffee. I'm like, oh yeah. But yeah, so it was just like, that was a really awkward trip. And so, but then I just enjoyed the rest of the little vacation time that we had there.
Yeah.
And I kind of just, you know, I realized,
which is surprising when you say you enjoyed the rest of the time. Like,
it was very sad, and I was very, you know, like,
you're in dreary Seattle, feeling dreary things.
But it was like, we still had, you know, we had a good time, and well, like, I still had to hang out with him. I was staying with him at the time. It wasn't like I was in a hotel or anything. So I'm like, I have to wait till my tickets are up. So anyway,
you just glued a smile to your face and just...
Oh no, I was miserable the whole time, but I was like, I'm gonna enjoy Seattle. Wow. So I was like, so we still went out and did things, and we still hung out, but it was just really awkward. But then anyway, so like, when I came home, it was like, he would still try to talk to me, and it was just like, no, like, I don't remember how that ended, if we both decided that we weren't going to talk to each other. I think it was probably like, we were just like, this is not healthy to like continue a conversation or a friendship or anything. It's like, let's just end that.
Yeah.
And so then I decided that I just kind of wanted to take some time to just like focus on myself, because I was like, clearly, like, why do I keep, this is when I was like, had that big revelation of like, why do I keep falling into these same patterns? Why do I keep, you know, dating the same people? Why do I, you know, like, why do I let myself do this? And so I was like, screw it, I'm gonna like enjoy myself. I'm gonna, because I realized, like, you ever heard that like we accept the love we think we deserve.
Yes.
Like, that is a huge thing. And
Yes.
I think, I'm like, why did I feel like I deserve to be with a bad like, not a bad person, but just like bad boyfriends.
Yeah.
And because I don't think any of these guys were bad people. Like, they're just going through their own shit. They don't need to necessarily affect mine. But
Wow.
yeah, so
So that
but that
ended.
just,
You had your epiphany and started this whole working on yourself thing.
Yeah. So
was there anything specific about working on yourself that you remember, certain strides, or you remember certain like real changes in you that you were like, oh, this is good, let's do this?
I just remember, like, I'm not gonna worry about, because I was always so like, oh, who am I gonna go out with, what am I gonna do, like, I need to be, you know, I was so worried about being in a relationship that I'm like, why am I doing that, like, why does that matter? And so I was like, I'm gonna go out with my friends, and like, even like, you'd go to a bar and you're like, oh, like, who's that guy, you know, and I'm like, stop it, like, I'm going to the bar and I'm going to listen to some good music. Or I'm going to go, you know, hang out with my girlfriends. And I spent a lot of time with my family and like, reconnecting with, like,
and yeah,
friends.
Is there something to be said for that piece of you that's just like, oh, what's up with that guy? Like, that to me feels like an ingredient in why sex ruins everything.
Yeah.
All the time. Just the fact that your chemical brain can't not try to find a mating partner, because we just can't get out of the instinct that's like, that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Well, it's also, I used to talk about this a lot, but what is it, oxytocin, or it's that hormone that's released, that love hormone, that's basically, I think you're right, yeah. I think it's oxytocin, I don't know, I could be saying it wrong, but
Oxycontin's the drug, so oxytocin
bad.
Sounds right.
Oxytocin or oxytocin, I don't know, but there's that, like, and I always say, I'm like, I don't want to be too physical with somebody or too intimate with somebody before I know them, because it's like, you get that feeling of, that like, oh, I, like, this person is everything, because you get that connection to them.
Yeah.
When they're not necessarily a good human being for you.
Right.
And not that they're not a good human being, just that they're not the right one for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, I think that's why it works so well with Jeremy, because Jeremy and I got to know each other as human beings first, and like, we got to, you know, see what we were into and what kind of person, and then we also got to decide, you know, because that was one of the things I wanted to do that year, was just kind of decide what kind of person that I was looking for, because you know, you can't just decide, like, you're not gonna get like every little thing that you want out of a person, you know, like,
yes,
he's a lawyer and he's gonna be a doctor and he's gonna be tall and he's gonna be dark. It's like, you can't have all of that.
Yes.
But you got the non-negotiable things. So I was like, I wanted somebody who didn't do drugs, who wasn't abusive, who wasn't, you know, somebody who was funny, who, you know, I was like, sci-fi was a big thing for me. I went out on a date with a guy who didn't like Star Wars, and I was like, oh, that's not gonna work. Like, sorry. But it's like, but Jeremy didn't watch Doctor Who as much as I did, but that was something that we enjoyed together, because, and he gets me to watch like Star Trek and stuff, but it's like, he opened me up to different facets, but we like the same basic things. Like, he and I don't love the same things all the time, but we share common interests, and I think that was a big part of what I was looking for. But I also just stopped looking, and I also, like, big part of it was actually I started watching this YouTube a lot. But it was, there's this guy Justin Scarred, and Jeremy and I love him, but now it's like he got into him because of me. But he was going through a divorce at the time, and he was he was on his quest for positivity, and he was literally just, every week he would just do a show, and he would talk about, you know, stuff that was important to him, and he's like, I'm just trying to be happy, and I'm like, that's cool, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And so I kind of identified with that for a while.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think just, I'm like, I need to do this. I need to just kind of love myself, because how the heck am I supposed, like, going back to that, we choose the love that we think we deserve. It's like, if you don't love yourself, then how the hell are you going to expect anybody to actually treat you with respect or anything?
100%. Out of curiosity, is that one one of your non-negotiables with Jeremy is like he's such a positive dude.
He really is, yeah.
So you just get, I mean, I imagine you've also been with and around him on his bad days. Everyone
yeah.
has them. But for the most part, he just seems like he just wants to be happy.
Oh, yeah. And which is funny because he's such a nihilist. And I think what's funny is, so I always say, like, he's a nihilist in, like, the Joker kind of perspective, which is funny because you say he's so positive. He really is.
Mm-hmm.
But we're both, I feel like, nihilists, and I'm the nihilist in the way that I feel like it doesn't matter. I'm very, like, you know, bullshit doesn't matter. Like, your life doesn't affect me. I don't affect yours unless it actually does. I don't need to care about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And he's very much like, oh, if the world burned down, like, I don't care. Like, he cares about his family and his life and everything, but it's like, if the world burned down tomorrow, it's like, it'd be like, okay. And
there's no maliciousness in that? He's
No.
not saying if the world burned down tomorrow,
Like,
fuck them, they deserve it?
No, it's more like, if that's what happens, and we could start over, and I don't want to speak for him, but it's like, but with me, I'm just like, if that's what happens, then what are we going to do next, you know? Like, where does this go following that?
Does that, I mean, in connection with that, is he a doomsday prepper? Does he, like...
Oh, totally, that's actually what's in our gym room, is like some bug out bags and stuff. I didn't say that, but no, it's not like doomsday prepper, but it's like he's got a bag where it was like, if shit hit the fan tomorrow, then it's like we each got a bag of like, okay, I got, you know, my camping supplies and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, if I gotta get out of town, I'm like, I don't know what's going on in the world. I'm actually more of the like, is the world going to end tomorrow? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm like, it wouldn't matter. It's like, you're either gonna be there or you're not. Just gotta enjoy those moments, you know?
And definitely nihilism. I've been actually, like, I've been trying to figure myself out for a few years now because, you know, I attend the Mormon church. I think almost more anymore is like, I was thinking about it recently and I'm like, what do you get out of it? What's your deal? Like, why are you connected to it still? And I'm just like, you know, I just think it's a podcast I subscribe to. Like, it's not anything there's a lot about it that I don't live or input into my life, but I think I enjoy the philosophical aspect of listening to people talk about this Jesus fairy tale in new and interesting ways.
I took the wrong turn. I was supposed to get off there. Now I don't know where I'm going.
Actually, if you get, well, because we're in Phoenix right now, I think if you keep going, I think we're eventually going to hit 44th.
Figure it out.
Well, that's where my office is. And I don't know where this coffee shop. You deal with that.
Actually, because I set it up earlier, so now.
Oh, good. We know where we're going.
Kind of. But
I've been thinking about the conclusion that I came to is that I think I'm a nihilist because there's been enough pain come into my life that I think it's shaken me free from feeling like I'm actually going to ever accomplish anything that's going to make me happy. And originally that hit me as depression, but the longer it stuck around, it turned into like a maniacal Joker way of looking at the world, where it's just like, oh, this is all just a game. And if you're losing the game, it doesn't make you a loser. It just means you have to change the game to get something you want out of it.
See, and I had to stop thinking about life as a game. Like, that was actually one of the things with Jeremy. Like, when he and I started dating, it was like, I think I was just tired of people, like, it comes back to what we were talking to at the beginning of, like, the, like, oh, I don't want to do things because they don't want me to. It's like, I didn't like, how do I describe this? I didn't like, if you go out with a guy or girl, whatever, but if you go out with somebody and they're like, you obviously like that person, but most of the people I was going out with, they're like, I didn't know if they liked me. I didn't know if they actually felt something for me. And I actually, like, broke up with a guy once because I was like, I didn't realize that you actually had any feelings towards me. And he's like, of course I did. I was like, but you never said it. And so I was like, why are we doing this? Like, this is stupid. So, like, I went out on a date with somebody and I was like, what's going on here? Like, is this a date? Is this not? And he's like, what? Like, he was so so baffled by like my forwardness. And sorry, I'm trying to watch this and concentrate.
Do it.
But and he was so baffled by like that I was forward about like, no, this is what I just want to know. Like, is that what's going on? Is that, you know, like, is that what you actually want? And it's like nobody would actually say, like, they were afraid of it. Was that romantic chicken? It was just that, like, oh, if I say something and she doesn't like me, who's going to say it first? Who's going to, like, oh, she's going to reject me. And I'm like, clearly I'm hanging out with you. I want to spend time with you. But people were so, like, just playing the stupid games that, like, when I met Jeremy, I was, like, he sent me a picture of his shoes on Snapchat or something like that. And he was, like, a 3-second little snap. And he was like, hey, I just want to say that you really brighten my day, and your Instagram, like, always makes me really happy. And, like, I have just this crush on you. And I was like, excuse me, mister, did you just send me a 3-second, little Snapchat? I just snorted. But it's like, well, get back here. And I was like, explain yourself. And then he did, and he wrote me this really beautiful message saying just, like, how that, he really felt like we had a connection, and, like, but he was too scared to say it, and he just felt like that I should know. And I was like, finally, like, just say what you mean.
Yeah.
And then I was like, so are you going to ask me out on a date? And he's like, whoa. I was like, well, where was that going if not to be like, we're going out on a date? Like, what do you expect from that? And
which really insinuates something about Jeremy that kind of breaks my heart. That, like, I feel like that's the way the world's treated him.
Yeah.
That he's been like, you're great. And they've been like, you're not. And he's just used to people, like, selling him short and brushing him off.
Yeah.
And that hurts my heart.
It does. Yeah, that's a big part of it.
He's a really, really sweet guy. And so talented. There's just no reason why.
Yeah, I don't like the way that the world has treated him. But he also, like, he figures it out. Like, he's got, I think that's one of the things I love most about him is, like, that he's like, yeah, life sucks, but you can't just let it suck. Like, you have to find your moments that you enjoy, and you have to, and he also has his therapy through his music, which, like, he's starting to pull me into, and I'm figuring out where I'm going. Like, you talk now, I'm focusing.
I mean, I guess that brings up a really interesting topic, and easily half the reason why I was like, I'm going to get you on the podcast at some point, so it just sort of happened naturally. But, and I guess this is a hard right turn, but when's the first time that you heard your own voice, and thought, this is good?
Oh, the voice. Yeah, I don't know, when I was little, my mom always told, like, she told me one time before this, she thought that, she's like, oh, wow, you can actually, like, she's like, you could sing from when you were little. And I was like, yeah, but, like, does that really matter? And she, I don't know, I used to sing in choir, and I used to do stuff, through that. And I remember in, like, I think it was in high school, and my little sister's like, you should be on American Idol. And I was like, do you want Simon Cowell to make me cry? And she's like, no. And I was like, honey, I wouldn't get to that level. And she's like,
why do you
should do it? But I was just like, I didn't feel like I had anything particularly special about my voice or anything where I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna, this is something that people want to hear, or I want to put out there. Wow. But I also wasn't really like, I just sang for fun. I just do stuff, But then when I met Jeremy, he was more like, dude, why don't you? Like, why don't we? So we're working on some stuff right now, but he's just getting me more comfortable with doing it. But I always just felt like, why, like, why do I need to? He'll like right now I've got all his music like lined up, and he listens to it in the car, like it's on my thing, and we listen to it a lot, and he enjoys it, I enjoy it, but I'm like, I didn't like enjoy hearing myself sing, I just like to sing. And then he's like, dude, this is good, like we should just, I'm gonna work on an album for you. So we've been working on some stuff, and it's fun. I don't know, but I'm also like, I practice and I'm doing things, but there's some songs that I'm like, oh, I don't like the sound of that, and then there's some things where I'm like, oh, I really like that. And I think I'm getting more comfortable with being myself and being a little weird. Like, the other day he was asking, he was like, what kind of... We were listening to Ludo, I think, and I was like, yeah, this is kind of like... This is what I like to sing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like... But he's like, you have such a jazzy voice. And I was like, yeah, but I also, like... I really like, you know... I was like, my perfect band or whatever, I would like, it'd be like a little bit of Ludo and a little bit of Garbage and a little bit of like Gwen Stefani. And he's like, none of that makes sense. But he's like, but I see where you're going. And I was like, yeah, I have like a very, like, when I just, we were talking about it the other day, and I was like, you just gotta like have fun with it. So we've been working on the Talking Heads. We were doing a cover of Psycho Killer.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I've been just kind of singing along in the car, and I was like, I was singing it the other day, and I came home and I was like, dude, I got real weird with it. And I was like, I'm really excited to do this, but I'm also really excited because I love the way that he turned, like with the Berlin song, it's like I loved what he did with this song. It wasn't that I loved the song, it was like I loved what he had turned that into.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really excited to do it because I was really excited to like play along with him.
How long did that take you?
We did that. I mean, I practiced the song for a few weeks, but we basically did that in like 3 or 4 takes.
Wow.
Like, it was fun. He was just like, and he's a really good producer. He'll like get something out of me that I wasn't, like, I wish he would do that for a living, but he just has so much fun with it. Or like, you could have fun and get paid too. But that's me being a wife.
Yeah.
But he loves doing that stuff. He loves doing stuff with like you and like with Idiokin, and he like really genuinely enjoys that stuff.
After the fact, I felt a little bad after doing my album with him because I got the feeling like he would have enjoyed producing it more.
Oh, yeah.
And I just came in with this thing ready to go, and I just needed him to turn a microphone on and let me do my thing, and he was listening, and just like you could see him just like trying not to say things. Like, all right.
I do the same thing. Like he Ross had sent something over, and I'm sitting there the first time I've heard it, and I'm like singing backup vocals on it, and I'm like, I've never heard it before, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, was I not supposed to do that? And so he called Ross, and he's like, dude, you should probably do this. And he's like, he had the same thought process that I had. And but I was like, you stole the thing that I was gonna say. but it was like, then I heard Ross on the phone, and he's like, oh yeah, I was actually thinking the same thing myself. Like, I was thinking we'd add this and do this here, and then we were sitting there, and I was like, he's getting me to be more creative, and it's like, it's fun. I don't know, it's like, see, I think for me, it's like a fun hobby, and then for Jeremy, it's like, this is passion. Like, but I'm like, at least I get something.
This is a legacy for us. Like, we're leaving behind, I don't know, a piece of our soul.
Yeah.
In these songs.
I know. I see how like emotional you guys get. Like your post the other day, where you were talking about how you're like why am I doing this? If like, and then like he'll post and he's like, oh, nobody listened to it. I always tease him. There's that.
Yeah.
What is that from Josie and the Pussycats, where he's like, Skanky had a rock show and nobody came, and I think it's funny, and I'm like, but it's like, because I'm like, oh, nobody showed up, or nobody listened to us, or nobody did that. But it's like, to me, I'm like, I don't care if nobody listened. Like, I did it to have fun with my husband, you know. And then he's like, nobody bought my album. or somebody did, but it was like, I was like, dude, you got all these people to listen. He's like, yeah, but they didn't tell me it was good, or they didn't tell me anything about it. Or like, he'll send me a song, and he's like, did you like it? And I'm like, I haven't listened to it yet. Like, I'm at work. And he's like, tell me what you think when you listen to it. And I'm like, it was so good. And he's like, you didn't like it. And I'm like, I did too. I loved it. I'm just at work, and I'm texting you in between. Like, I listened to it on my lunch break.
It's that second part of the conversation he'll never have with me. Like, when I send him feedback, which oftentimes isn't like uproarious. It's just like, cool, man. That's a sweet, like,
oh yeah,
he's always like, thanks, man. But I get the feeling like he's really just like, you hated it and you're not telling me.
You hated
Why
it, what
don't
else?
you just say that?
Because he loves feedback. He loves that. And I think he thrives off knowing that somebody, you know, enjoyed what he was doing, because otherwise, what is he doing?
Yeah.
And whereas I'm like whatever, I get uncomfortable with that, where I'm like, wait, but we went and did that show, the last show where we're actually allowed outside. But we went and like I did the Foo Fighters song.
Yeah, you did.
And I was like, shut up. And I was like, but I was like really, I was like, oh, people are gonna tell me that they liked it, or they're gonna tell me, you know, oh, you did such a good job. And I'm like, I don't want to hear that.
Why not? That's so interesting.
I don't know. I'm just like, I just want to do it and be done and then go back to my life.
I understand that completely, but
although I did really love, like, I think you and a couple, like, I sent it, the Berlin song, I just sent it to a couple girls from work, and I was like, oh, I feel like you would appreciate this, or you might actually like the sound of this, but I didn't, like, Jeremy will send it to everybody, I'm like, I posted it for a couple of friends, but I'm like, I don't know, and, but somebody was like, one of the girls at work was like, holy shit, that's you? And I was like, yeah. She's like, dude, you're like, what did she say? She was like a mix of Joan Jett and Courtney Love, or
yeah,
and then,
I hear it. Yeah.
Then she was like, or somebody else said like, oh, you said something like Gwen Stefani and Courtney Love, or something like that, and I was like, okay. I was like, I accept that. Like, I like that. Like, I appreciate, because I was like, okay, I can hear that.
There's so much like. And I don't know, for anybody watching this, stop right now and just go to I don't know, YouTube or Spotify or whatever you use. I think it's an actual psychic.
Yeah, it's under his.
Actually, it's Actual Psychic Violence is the band name. It's the Metro. It's a cover by Berlin. Just listen to it and then come back and listen to this conversation, because it's. Yes, his instrumentals are great, and it's a really fun interpretation of the song. Your vocals are. There's so much control. Like, if it was accidental, you're an accidental genius, and you should do music at all times, because who knows what brilliant accident will fall out of your face. But I get the feeling that that's not true. I think you know what you're doing. I think you design it to sound in a certain way, and based on that, you're a producer in your own right.
I think, like, I know what sounds good in my voice and what doesn't. Like, even the final copy of it, there was some things where I was like, oh, I don't like the way that my voice sounded there. And he's like, oh, I loved that. Like, this is, like, how you did this? Or, like, how I made it, like... Because there was these parts during the song where he was like, oh, you're rushing the beat. You're, like, ahead of the beat. And you need to, like, sing with the... You know, don't sing ahead or don't sing behind. And I'm not used to that stuff. I'm just like, oh, I'm just singing along with the song. And so then I was like, and then there was parts of it where he's like, oh, he's trying to get more out of me. So he's like, oh, you're feeling like, right now she's feeling, you know, she's really pissed off at this guy. And I'm like, I'm happy. I don't have anything to be pissed off about. I'm like channeling my past things, and I'm like, I'm over all that shit. And so like, I don't know where to channel this anger from, because I'm a very bubbly person. And he's like, just do it. Like, just. And so I'm listening to him, I'm like, okay, she's like really mad here, and she's like growly, and dude, go, you were there. Sorry. And so then we're listening, and he's like, we did that like a couple times, and he's like, okay, that's good enough. And I'm like, no, I could do more. I could do better. Like, let me do it. And but then it's like the way he produced it a little bit, and or like a lot, and he changed some stuff, and I came back in the morning, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like actually really like that. And there was some stuff where I still am like, I don't like it. But he's like, no, that's my favorite part. Like, that's what, so I was like, well, as long as he appreciates that, you know, like that makes me happy.
Which is interesting, because even just hearing you say that, it makes me think about myself, I suppose, that I think I've almost purposely hung on to the darkness of my teen years and my 20s and 30s.
All you boys do that.
So as to, like, contribute to my artistic creativity. So I have something to draw from, rather than processing it, getting over it, being happy, and then being like, well, I don't know how I'm going to sing a sad song now, because I don't have something to plug into and be like, boy, that sucked.
That's what Jeremy says a lot, like, because his music has been his therapy for years. Like, it's all his therapy. And, like, his last album, the Jezebel album, it was mostly, like, him just kind of talking about, like, it was, like, almost like a concept album. It was, like, it starts with his last tragic relationship, and then it's like, and then like the things that he would, because it's like all people are idiots in love, and you know, you do things and you put, like what the whole conversation earlier was about, it's like you put up with stupid shit because you have that tie to them. But it's like, why? They're terrible to you. It's like they might not be terrible human beings, but they are terrible for you. And it's like, that makes no sense, but you just do it. So then it's like the album progressed to like, it's like, then it was like his afterfall of like the depression and the being sad and getting over a relationship. And I always used to tease him because I'm like, dude, get over that shit. Like, it's like, and he's like, oh no, I'm over it. But I'm like, you are still writing songs about it. And he's like, no, it's just like, I'm just using my past, you know, trauma to make good music. And so I always just tease him because it's like, a lot of girls get like really upset, like, oh, why are you singing about this girl? And I'm like, I don't care, he's with me, he married me, like, I know he's not still hung up on that stuff. but then it's like, I was really proud of him though, like, he did this album and he's like, okay, I think I'm done. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, oh no, I think I'm done writing about that stuff, like, I'm gonna start writing about this. And now he's like he's doing this album where it's a little bit more like political, and not political, but just like more like, this is what's going on with the world. And I'm gonna park probably.
Oh, it's like a walk-in kind of place?
It's right over there. I don't know. I don't know. We're gonna hang. I don't know. We can pause and get some coffee. Yeah, I made him drive all the way over here just to get a cup of coffee.
All right, we'll be back to this.
Whatever. Like, that's what I always try to be for Adeline. And I'm like, I don't want her to grow up thinking like, oh yeah, like I should meet my prince, and I should, you know, he has to go through some horrible, tragic thing, and then he has to like, you know, like the romantic comedies where they're always like, oh, like we should hate each other and we're not healthy for each other, but then there's this whole but then like something happens that breaks us up, and then we should be together because of nonsense. And it's like, huh? Like, why is that? Why should you be with him? That was it.
And yet, in the sense of a lot of jokes that I think were made during the Trump era that I thought were like, I don't know, kind of wittily funny, is like, to describe the presidents we had before him, and then to look at him being the president, it's kind of like we were in these really safe, almost boring relationships, and at some point we're just like, we need to date a whore, man. We just need to date a dirty girl that's gonna like tie us to the bed and
to make you realize like what you need. You need some stability, and you need some.
In that sense, those rom-coms, like, they make decent points about the fact it's like, yeah, this is one chapter of what you're gonna go through or what you're gonna think you need.
Well, and I think a lot of that, like, I was always like, I remember that day that I was watching it, and I'm like, you know, that moment where you realize that you identify more with the villain of the story than you do with like the hero and everything. You're like, man,
that's
these
the Dark
kids,
Knight for me, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's making a lot of sense.
He really does. I'm like, the Joker makes way more sense than anybody. But it's like, you look at these relationships and you're like, holy shit. Like, I was watching some Katherine Heigl movie, and I was like, man, like, she is really bad for him and he is really bad for her, and yet suddenly they're like, oh, but you like kids, so we should date. And or like 500 Days of Summer, like, that is one of my favorite movies. I think I watched that like hundreds of times.
Great.
And I love that movie. And one of those things is like, you watch it and it's like, they tell you up front, it's not a love story. It's but it's like your whole life.
Those opening title cards are genius. Right? It's just like, this is a story about that. It has no connection to anybody, especially you, Jenny. Bitch. So brilliant.
Yeah, it's so true though. It's like, I feel like what we've been talking about, it's like my whole life was always like, what am I projecting on other people, and what are they projecting onto me?
Yeah. And
I finally had to realize, like, oh, I don't need somebody who's gonna do that. I'm not a fairy tale. I'm not a fantasy in your head, and you're not gonna be in mine.
Well, hang on a second.
Hang on there!
Is there a space inside of the way that you see yourself that you can conceptualize the ways that you fulfill the male fantasy?
Oh, I'm sure I do. But I do for my husband, and, you know, like, that's like, but it's like, he sees things in me that he has things about me that he loves in me. I totally just password switched. I get very distracted.
You're doing a great job.
Doing a great job.
We're headed the right direction. I mean, your house is that way,
yeah.
so.
It's fine. This is actually the way I was supposed to go to get here, so it's fine. So I'll figure it out. I really haven't been over here in a long time. And when we used to go down Thomas, like.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so yeah, but it's like, and that was another thing about myself that was learning to love yourself. It's like, I'm a thick girl, you know, I'm, you know, like, I'm weird. I have things in my personality that, like, don't adhere well to others. But I found the person that fits with. Like, you got that puzzle piece that's like, oh, this one makes sense. Like, instead of trying to jam it together, like, I've had guys that have dated me that are like, I remember, like, this guy I dated a long, long time ago. He was making fun of his ex-girlfriend. He's like, oh, she's just round. Like, she's just round shaped. And he was, like, making fun of her. And I was like, I'm very round shaped. Like, and that was when we broke up. He was like, well, you were fat and you were this. And I'm like, you knew that going in. Like, you know, yeah. But it was like, but that was his way of, like, because it was like, you were attracted to something there. But it was like, that was his way of, like, expressing, like, oh, no, I don't actually like you. And it was like, maybe there was other things that you were compensating for, you know, going, you know,
that's
saying that you liked. But
yeah, like if my girlfriend's got big jugs or something, like it's going to make me feel less about this about myself. I don't know that I've ever even thought about that.
No,
like,
it's like,
does my partner have something that makes me feel compensated for something I don't like about myself?
But also, like, looks fade. Like, we joke all the time.
No, they don't. I'm as cute as the day I was born.
Press the button. But it's like, but there are things that it's like with Jeremy, it's like, Jeremy is my best friend. Like, if he was, like, horribly disfigured tomorrow and he was, like, a horrible, grotesque beast, I'd still love him to death. I'd find him sexy as hell, because it's like, that, I'm dating a person. I'm not dating the idea of him, and I'm, like, very attracted to him, but that's not why I'm dating him. And we talk about that a lot. It's like, he used to date, like, these girls that were very, you know, like, very beautiful and very thin and very, you know, whatever, but it's like, I don't think they brought much to the table for him. And it was like, I did the same thing. Or I remember, you know, during my youth of, like, trying to find out what I wanted, I was like, yeah, I just need, like, a meathead, you know, somebody who's really muscular and hot. And I'm like, this is boring. I think we went on one date and I was like, can I go now? But it's like, you gotta experience people and, you know, figure out what type of people fit you. And it's like, it's the same thing with friends.
That, what you said a minute ago about, you know, I guess we're all just conditioned to create a picture in our mind of the perfect man or the perfect woman and to be looking for that. And the truth is,
that's where you fail.
Like, Bo Burnham has this brilliant stand-up special called Make Happy. And in the middle of it, there's this whole song about, like, if you want love, just find someone and love them. The idea being that, like, and the verses basically talk about, like, you know, here's your idea of a perfect man, but just last week he died. Or here's your idea of a perfect woman, but, you know, she wouldn't want you. And I don't know why I'm so touched by the chorus of the song, but I think it was the beginning of my thought process of, I need to stop looking for a perfect woman, and I need to start looking for the perfect woman.
Exactly.
The
and
one
you're not
that fits me.
Settling for somebody. It's not, because I've heard guys talk about that where they're like, oh, I guess I could date this girl or whatever. But it really, it's like, is that the right time? Is that the right, you know, person? You
know what's weird? I mean, if she watches this, Gina, I love you. When I started dating my current girlfriend, it sort of started like that. That I was like, oh, this is somebody I could date.
Yeah.
And then, like, 3 or 4 months later, sort of against my will, again, love you, I fell in love. And I was like, how did this happen? Where did this come from? And I've been, like, analyzing it ever since, where I'm just like, how did this incredible human sweep me off my feet? Like, I'm too smart to be snuck up on like this. Like, what happened? And I think the truth is, I just picked someone and decided to love her without, like,
but
waiting
she has
for her
qualities
to
that you appreciate and you
Completely.
respect and you admire.
And then I came to admire more and more.
Mm-hmm. And you fall in love with that person more and more every day. Yeah. That's what with Jeremy, it's like every single day I have found something different, or, you know, like it goes back to what we were talking about where it's like you're different people every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I didn't mean like, oh, I'm a totally different person, but I'm just saying, like, you change and you have different qualities to you that you're like, oh, I didn't notice that before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, there's things about him that I'm like, holy shit, I am, like, so in love with you right now. And it's like, I'm like, I felt that yesterday, but I'm like, oh, I really feel it today.
Did you?
Yeah.
Can you share? I'm so intrigued.
No, I don't know, like, today it was like, I think he had, like, in the middle of the night, like, he had fallen asleep on the couch last night, and I was like, whatever, like, I'm leaving him there, because it's, like, I'm married, 3 years, and I'm like, it's fine. He, like, we were watching American Horror Story last night, and
oh, wow.
it was like, I was starting to drift off, and I'm like, I'm going to bed, and I was like, do you want to come? And he's like, nah. So I was like, you're good. But it's like, that he snuck into bed in the middle of the night, and it was like, that was really nice, just waking up, and I was like, oh, you came back, like, you're here. And then
that is cute.
He was like, but then he was having like this nightmare, like he was having like, and sometimes like you could hear him screaming in his sleep, and he's like, like this very loud, but it's like, it's very like closeted, scream. He probably doesn't want me to talk about this, but I just grabbed his hand, and he was like, you could tell it startled him, but then he just held my hand, and I was like, love. Are you awake? Are you okay? And he's like, I'm fine. I just had a really weird dream. And I was like, are you good? Like, what was about? And he told me about his dream, and then we shared. And then it was like, and I was like, shit, what time is it? And he's like, it's 6:30. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up. And he's like, no, you pulled me out of this really messed up dream. And then, but it's like, but he never let go of my hand. And I was like, oh, like, that was really sweet. And that was really cute.
That is sweet.
And then it's like,
gotta love that guy.
We had those little moments where I'm like, and it's like my eyes are getting sweaty with respect. Like, I'm like, that whole, like, I'm like getting emotional. So I'm like,
respect.
He's so sweet. And I'm like, I just love him. And like, he makes me happy.
Well, not to take turn into maybe something that might not be super pleasant, but mostly just because I'm curious. When Jeremy was on, we talked about the accident in school that deprived him of his teeth. And I know he mentioned that when you two first met and were dating and kind of getting serious, that your friends had a lot of questions for you about, like, why are you dating this meth head? What's going on with you? And you were just like,
and you know what's funny?
Wow.
I had dated two guys that were actually had done meth, and they were like getting over, and that's why I was like, never doing somebody who did drugs or anything like that. And so I asked him about it. We went to NASCAR, which is actually like what we were supposed to be doing today. Thank you, NASCAR, for taking away my tickets. But I'm like, thanks. But yeah, so that was like, I just remember we were walking around, and I was like, I had noticed him, like, he'd smile, but he never really, like, it wasn't a teethy grin, and then I noticed that he didn't have the top teeth, and I was like, tell me what's going on, like, tell me about that story, like, what's up with that? And it wasn't that I was like, tell me your life story, but I was just like, because I'm gonna accept you no matter what, but I was just like, what's going on, and like, why did you never talk about that? And he's like, he started like getting really emotional about it, and he told me what happened to him, and he told me that it was like, like, refer back to previous episodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, he told me about like what happened to him in school, and it was this mean prank that somebody pulled on him, and I was like, holy shit, like, but it's like it had happened over time.
Yeah.
And it's like, but like dental implants are really expensive, and but yeah, I had a few people that are like, well, did you do drugs? Did you do this? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, you believe? And I'm like, yeah, I believe that. Like, that's what he told me, and that's what happened to him. So
I think that's what's interesting about him too, because in a way that I guess is just sort of unfortunate to his predicament, his behavior has this level of erraticism because of his heightened attention issues that can insinuate that there's a problem there that there's not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could just watch him behave, and you're just like, is he on something right now? And he's not. He's just on life. Like, he's just a very hyperactive person.
He's just that's the same with me. I'm like, well, I'm on caffeine, but I mean, like, he's not, like, he doesn't do drugs. He doesn't, like, that's just who he is. Yeah, and it's like, some people might be like, but I think people like to project things onto you of, like, what you think is going on. I'm like, why? Like, why does that matter to you? You know, what he's doing, what he's not. Because it's like, that affects me. It doesn't affect you.
Right.
That affects him. It doesn't affect you. Why does that matter to you? And
how bad would that, like, fuck your perception of him up if all of a sudden out of nowhere he came home and he'd just, like, found a way and gotten some sort of, like, surgery, and now he's just got, like, you know, teeth.
That would make him happy, then that would make me happy. Like,
but you wouldn't, I mean, you wouldn't have to, like, stare at him for, like, 3 weeks straight just to kind of reinstall
I'd probably
how
be
you
like,
saw him?
There's pictures of him with teeth, and I'm like, you look really goofy. Like, but I'm just like, he's my best friend. Like, he's very much like, you know, so like, we tease each other all the time. Like, we're very, like, we love to give each other, you know, like, to tease each other. So it's like, yeah, I think it would be, like, weird to get used to, but I was like, that would be, I wouldn't care either way.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
like,
beautiful.
he's beautiful. It's
yes,
like, he's a fucking beautiful man.
Yes, he is.
So I was like, but like I said, it's like, that's not what attracts me to him. Like, he's a really good dad, and he's a really good person. And
it's the only way you've known him.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't know him before all that, so it's just him, you know, yeah.
Like, he was cute before.
That's the same with me. Like, you say you see pictures of him with these, and I'm like, oh, wow. I didn't even think to scroll back through his Instagram. I didn't even think that something like that existed.
I've seen, like, family pictures and stuff from, like, high school and stuff. I'm like,
I guess I think, like, recent stuff.
yeah,
probably
no,
knew
it
him
was
back
like,
then.
because it was more like, because this happened in college.
Right.
So I have, like, a couple of pictures from his high school years and stuff like that.
That's interesting. What a fucking guy. So, you guys married 5 years?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, we've been together for like 6 years.
Got it.
This will be our 7th.
And prior to me coming along and meeting him at these Ross gigs and then being like, we should put your records out, was he, outside of live performances, musically active? Because I get the feeling like he wasn't really focusing on his own thing. He
actually, and it was a lot of it was like, he was really messed up from his previous relationship and stuff like that, and he was going through the, like, I mean, he got Adeline back and he got his life back, like, you know, he got all that, but like, once his daughter was back in his life, he kind of started getting his life back to where he wanted it. But I think a lot of it, he said that he hadn't wrote new music or done anything, and then we moved in together, and I remember he was like so excited. He was like, I wrote this song, and he's like I did this song, and he's like, I think a lot of it he attributes to, like, our relationship, but I think it's like, I think he was just felt comfortable being himself and, like, actually expressing himself again. And I think it's also like he found that desire to do, like, to have fun and to do something. And I don't know, it was like, I really am very grateful to Ross, because it's like, I thought that they were like these really good friends before that, and he's like, oh, I kind of knew Ross from, like, performing with him, but he's like, I had asked him once, and he's like, oh no, I really didn't hang out with Ross before this. And now I'm like, I like to tease him. I'm like, how's your boyfriend? Like, how's Ross? And I'm really good friends with, like I love seeing his wife Robin. It was like, I love that. And I'm like, I just hate that they live, like, you guys live so far away.
Yes.
Because we live, like,
even from me,
way
like,
out here, I know, I feel bad
20
for you,
minutes
just,
south
like,
from me, but I'm worth it. Anytime they invite me over, I'm like, yes, please.
But I was, like, really grateful that we met them, because he's just like, yeah, come out and do a show. And Jerry's just so excited to, like, actually get out, because he misses being, like, in a band, like, actually having that, but it's so hard to find, like, a drummer and get somebody to actually commit. And there was a time where he was talking about, like, doing something, like, a project with an old friend of his. I think it was the guy that did The Itch. And
I think you mentioned that.
And they were really excited to do it, and then but he was like, I can't commit to like the scheduling process. Like, he didn't have a car at the time, and he wasn't. It's like, it was just, he wanted a lot out of him that he's like, I don't know that I can give that to you right now. And so he's like, okay, bye. And he's like, wait, I could figure it out. But
which is also something that's great about Jeremy. Like, the more that I get to know Jeremy, the more I want to find a way to make what he does easier on him and to give him more tools to do it. Because he's a brilliant engineer. He's a great producer because he studies. Like, he just watches the videos and figures out compression and just all these different tricks. And I just want to give him like the top of the line Mac Pro Tool. I just want to give him professional stuff, because I feel like give him 6 months and everybody will want to work with this guy. Because he knows how it works.
That's what, and he's like, that was actually when we first like moved in together. I remember like he was like, hey, you want to like do something for me that will make me really happy, but also like I'll never ask you for anything ever again, but it'll just make my life content. It's like he asked me to help him out buying this like the stuff that he uses for recording and everything. And so we kind of like set it up, and he was, because it was like something for his birthday or something, and it was like, it's like, you should get me this. And and it was like, I do not regret it at all. Like, it made him so happy. It's like, it's made his music sound so much better. Like, I listened to some of the stuff that he had done with other people, and I'm like, man, your stuff sounds really good just by itself. Like, just by yourself. But he really enjoys collaborating. Like, right now he's been doing stuff with like Reese and they've been doing some stuff together, and I'm like, this is fun, and you're having a good time. And
you have no idea how much I'm half tempted to just go out and find like $5,000 that I don't have to give Reese, Ross, and Jeremy all iMacs, so that like the collaborating can sort of all be on the same platform, because I feel like they're all just doing all this different stuff. Because I feel like if you empowered them in that way, the level of material that would be coming out of these three geniuses would just go off the charts.
Well, that was actually, Robin had asked, she had messaged me once, and she was like, hey, I want to get something, I don't know if it was like a birthday or anniversary or something. She's like, I want to get something for Ross. Like, can you ask Jeremy like what he uses to record stuff? And he's like, oh, no, tell her to get this and that and that, and she just trust me, and it'll make our lives so much easier. And now they're just working on I think Reese, because he sends his guitar tracks, and I don't know what he's using to record it, but it was like, I'm like, I don't know much about music, but I'm like, they're really buzzy, like what's going on? And he's like, so stuff, he's like, don't worry, I got this. And he'll like adjust stuff, and he adjusts the levels and everything, and it's pretty awful. But I was just like, no, what are you using? So he's like, he's like, tell Tammy she needs to buy him one of these. I was like, he is a grown-up man, he can go buy one. Which
is funny, because the Idiot Can album that came out, they title them so weird. I'm trying to remember the one that Reese did, the newest one.
That's the only one I don't have. I was gonna say, I have the old ones.
I'm listening to it just on Spotify, and it's not like the production is awful, because it does sound good, but I can tell what Jeremy's talking about. Like, the way he's recording his guitars or whatever is not the best, and yet front to back I'm just like, Reese is such a fucking good songwriter. I can't even, like, the songs don't even have to be flawless, and you're just in whatever it is he's talking about and however he's talking about it. It's so fun. I hate it. I hate all these guys. My whole music career, I've just felt like the least talented guy in the room, but I do possess like fanboyness, and I have ambition. So I just kind of want to put my energy behind somebody else's genius. Right. But I did that for 20 years, and it didn't turn out well. Like, it just ended up being a lot of stuff that's now just another burned out band that people are just moving on with their lives and don't care about anymore. So now I'm kind of like, okay, I have my own voice, I have my own musical style, maybe I should do that. But that's also weird, because I'm just like, nothing ever comes of it. B, there's no musicians that I can think of that are interested in like helping me with it.
Well,
which 20
everybody's
years ago
so-
was a different story. We were all
Yeah.
like jumping in on each other's projects.
But everybody's so like self-involved now, and everything
Yeah.
is like everything's over the internet now, and it's like not to get into like, oh, the world's changed, but it's like it really has. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, and especially right now, it's like you can't go to bars and clubs and play live. So it's
Yeah.
like people have been kind of like, I've been loving these live streams that you guys have been doing, and I'm like, I just go in and I'm like, we're gonna do karaoke. But
Such a good
it was
idea.
fun. It was like, it's a way to stay connected. But yeah, it's like there's some things where it's like, why, or you
It's
know,
the worst. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
I hate it.
It's
I
like,
hate it with my whole soul.
but I just think it's like people want something instant and something, you know, something right now. And it's like people don't listen to music the same way as they used to. People don't experience things the way they used to. And this guy's driving really
He
slow.
was in a
I'm like, we're
a tank full of
crawling.
propane.
And I'm like,
we're going to
go
die.
around this guy.
I actually just listened to a podcast about that. Two guys that I don't even know if, you know, anything they're saying is worth listening to, but they were talking about, is the single the new album? Like, have we, with the rapidness of what the internet has done to streaming culture and all that stuff, like, are our attention spans beyond albums?
I think so. It's like,
But that kind of freaks me out because I still listen to music for like an hour or two sometimes straight. So if it's just a bunch of singles,
but you are
I don't get to
different
experience
kind of
an
human
artist
being.
for like an hour straight, which is what an album does.
Because I think you guys are still like in that. You guys grew up in that where you enjoyed an album and you actually like paid attention to the whole thing. Whereas the kids nowadays don't do that, and it's like just like we were different from our, you know, our parents. It's like we don't do things the same way that they did.
Yeah.
But it's like people like the TikTok and with everything. It's like you want that little short 30-second thing. Like even my attention span. Like sometimes I'll listen to, you know, a thing and I'm like, okay, I listened to it for 5 minutes and now I'm bored and now I'm like on to the next one. And I'm like, why? Like I should just sit there.
If I'm being fair, I catch myself doing it too.
Yeah.
Where I'll get like 3 minutes into a Beach Boys song and I'm like, I know what's coming after this and I already had the orgasm. Maybe I should just hit next and just go on to my next emotional experience.
That's what, there was like albums that I'd listened to and I like, I don't know if it was I think it was a Ludo album or it was a Foo Fighter. It was something, but I was like, I have never listened to this front to back. Because Jeremy would like have me like listen to a whole album or something and I'm like, but literally, like, when I was in high school, I'm like, oh, I'm going to listen to this song. Okay, I know this next song.
Yeah.
We were listening to Hedwig and the Angry Inch. I think that was actually, like, we were listening to the soundtrack for that. And he was like, oh, I like this. You know, he was listening to Midnight Radio. And he's like, oh, I really like this. I'd like to do something with this.
Yeah, I want to cover it really bad.
And he was like, and I was like, you know, I don't think I've listened to this song in so long. Because I always just jump to Wicked Little Town or to like Sugar Daddy or like there's songs that I like. And I'm like, I haven't listened to this in ages.
Yeah.
Where I'm like legitimately just stopping and listening and enjoying it.
And there's a lot on the soundtrack that's not in the show.
Oh yeah.
Which is interesting that like to listen to like that look what you've done, like the full version of that song and wow.
It still frustrates me though that in the soundtrack that the Tommy Gnosis version of Wicked Little Town is first and then it's second. Because even in the show, it's second.
Yes.
Why?
I don't know.
Like that's
can't figure it out for the life of me.
I understand it.
I don't know. Or why they just didn't put the soundtrack in order. Why not just put it in the sequence of the way the movie is? Why? What are you doing?
Or the play or whatever, but it's like, what are you
Have you seen it? Have you seen it live, like a production
I haven't
of it?
seen it live, but I watched it like on YouTube with Neil Patrick Harris.
Lordy Jesus. I mean, it's probably the same thing, but like, just the way that they create that whole world on one stage in one band set. Exactly. Like that's what the original Hedwig and the Angry Inch was Hedwig telling you her entire story in a set of her band just playing at some club one night.
So like a one-woman show, yeah.
And just the way they handle the transformation, because she does turn into Tommy Gnosis, but the way like in the middle of oh fuck, I forget what the song is, where like the band's just like crazy jamming and she walks back behind the drum set, does the whole change, and then comes out as Tommy and then sings the Tommy Knows version of Wicked Little Town, and then they do Midnight Radio. It's fucking genius.
It's the oh shoot, what's it called? The fuck, I forgot the name of the song. I've got it in my head right now.
Yeah, it's the
I'm sorry.
Yeah, whatever that fucking song. I think it's called
great.
Hedwig's Lament? No, that's the one
No,
before
that's
it.
the one-
The
yeah.
soft one. Fuck, what is it called? I don't remember. Wow.
But that was actually one that I want to do with Jeremy, where I'm like, I want to do this.
That would be interesting.
That would be fun.
And it's perfect for him guitar-wise. Like, that's right
Oh,
up
yeah.
the punk avenue of what he likes.
It's funny. Sometimes I'll hand him something, and I'm like, I want to just do this just for fun, and he's like, no. And then
When you
other
guys
times,
pulled that Blank Pontchartrain, I was
Oh,
like, I'm
oh,
out.
that was so much
I'm never
fun.
playing again.
I
That
told
was
him, like,
so good.
I literally did that for you. It was like, because you did Drunken Lament
Right.
on one of your Instagram things, and I was like, Jeremy's like, you're gonna love Adam's show tonight, and I was like, I always listen after work, and he's like, no, there's just one song, like, he did, you're gonna love it, and I was like, why? And he's like, because it's like one of your favorite songs, and I was like, oh, okay. And I listened to it, and I was like, oh, he did it, and I'm singing along, and I'm like, I want to do it better. And it wasn't that I'm like, your version was so good, and then you did it again the next week, and I was like, oh, like, it was just so good. And he's like, he was telling me, he's like, you're gonna, like, he did something to the song where he changed a little bit, and he's like, you're gonna, like,
Which is ironic, because the first time I played it, when I debuted it as a new song, I went at it like the real song is. I gave it all the energy. But this time, I was literally just a lazy decision. I'm like, I don't have the energy for this, so I'm just gonna, like, quiet it down.
Yeah.
And then as I'm singing it, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this really works.
a good song you can strip down to its roots.
Yes.
And it's still a good song.
Yeah.
Or you can add all this flair to it,
Yep.
and it's still a good song.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, sometimes my favorite versions of songs are like the acoustic version, where it's just like very soft and very peaceful, and then other times I'm like, I like the big band version of it.
I just think you might have, like, unhorsed Ludo, like, as a band. Like, you
I
took something
love
they
Ludo.
created and made it better than I think they could. I don't think even they could do it that good acoustic.
I don't know. We're still like, because it's like, we didn't really practice it. We did that, and like, I threw it at him, and I was like, I want to do this song. And he's like, okay. And he's like, I want to do it on Halloween. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because he does it. I like to have like a month to practice things or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I'm from the choir mindset of like, you have your sheet music and you practice and you sing along with the tape and everything. And he's just like, I got it, let's go. And so he was like, first he listened to it and he's like, holy shit, that one's hard.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, there's this acoustic version of it that I really like. And he's like,
Oh, I didn't know they did one. Wow.
and then they did one, it was like a radio
Yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
And
I love that shit. Why doesn't
It's, like,
somebody make
really
a
good,
compilation
yeah.
of just like all these weird little radio appearances of bands?
they did it with KUPD. No.
I know the Edge. They would do acoustic live and rare, which was cool.
Yeah.
But I just mean across the board.
101.5
Give me
did
that
Yeah.
with all national radio
Yeah.
stations. Have them
That'd be
release some
great.
sort of giant compilation, like 100
Rated?
tracks
Yeah.
of just all sorts of crazy shit.
It's just a YouTube playlist now.
It's lame. Lame.
But it's funny because like there's this one. Like, do you know St. Vincent?
I've heard of them.
Oh, she's like, so it's Annie
And
Clark.
sure, her.
She's, well, it's a them, it's a band, yeah. But it's Annie Clark, and she's like, I've loved her voice forever.
Mhm.
And my favorite song is Black Rainbow.
Mhm.
And when Jeremy and I were first dating, he tried to do the song, and he like kind of did it. I was like, it sounds so good. I was like, I just want you to like play me the guitar, because I just love the guitar track of it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, just do that. And he was like, he thought I was saying like, you need to sing it and everything. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
just do it. And he was like, that's too much. Like, that's too much for me to, like, I'm not doing that. And so I'm like, I'm still to this day, I'm like, do that song. Like, I want that song. And he's like, no. And now I think he just does it, like, just because. Like, nah, I don't need to do that. But
I had an experience like that when I was learning America the Beautiful. Like, I you know, we all grew up with the song, so I knew it.
the song,
I
yeah.
needed the lyrics in front of me, but I got the gist of it. And then as I'm playing through the guitar part, I'm just like, Jesus Christ, this is well composed. Like, I don't even need lyrics. You just play the guitar part, and all of the little movements are all there. You can just listen to it and just start tearing up.
yeah, it just hits you.
Yes, 100%.
That's a good song.
It is a good song.
That was beautiful.
Dude, I mean, that whole thing almost came off the rails. I was fighting tears hard that whole song.
I know, I could see it.
And then
I
by
was
the
just
time
like,
I said goodnight, I was telling
You're
Gina,
like, oh, no.
I talked to her on the phone like, I don't know, 10 minutes afterwards and stuff, and I was like, I said goodnight. I hit end. I shared it to the Facebook, the Evening Score Facebook feed, and then like I sat back for no more than 10 or 15 seconds, and I just started ugly crying, and I was like sobbing for a good solid minute. And even in the middle of sobbing, I'm like, "What is wrong with you? Like, you've performed before. What is your deal?" And I was telling her, I think it's because in a way that I hadn't really like conceptualized, I've been holding so much tension because of all this political bullshit that's been going on for months, that something about playing that song, something about the fact that it's kind of all over. I mean, whatever. I'm sure Trump's going to keep kicking and screaming, and whatever. I guess we'll just have to deal with that. But for the most part, a new direction has been, indicated, and off we go to pursue it. It was such a release.
Yeah.
To just put something hopefully positive into the universe. And I don't know, I guess I didn't think that everything that had been going on had hit me that deeply, where I was just so pent up about it that I just needed to let that out. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, God, I love this. I hate that this happened on a live stream, but I also love that means it'll never go away.
But it was real.
I could like post this places and show people like this happened.
That's what, if you can take a song and it's like you feel something, that makes me want to watch it. Like that makes me connected to it. It's like there's a difference between like the lounge singer who's like singing a song and like, this is a song and I'm singing it. Yeah. Or it's like you're actually owning the song. You feel it and you're feeling something about it. Yeah. Like that's what means something, and that's what makes something real, and that's what makes somebody want to pay attention to you. Which
is interesting because I'm constantly wondering if that translates over a live stream. Just if I'm getting chills and if I'm really feeling it, do the people feel what I'm feeling? Can they hear this well enough that they're in this too?
That's what I always say. Like sometimes when we're watching, like we watch The Masked Singer a lot, or we watch, those TV shows where it's like, oh, we love that. We totally guessed Wendy Williams but in like 5 seconds, and I was like, that's totally her. But anyway, but it's like, but you watch something, and they're sitting there watching these, like the judges and everybody are watching these performers, and they're like American Idol, and they're like, oh, like that was so moving, and that like really hit me, and I'm like, oh, it's a song, I don't know, like what was that? Like I was like, oh, they were kind of flat and they were kind of key or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, or it was like, oh, that was really good. And like some things I was like, wow, that was really beautiful. Mm-hmm. But it's like, I feel like there's something about that. You feel music when it's like, and it literally you feel like the sound waves and everything. So it's like that's bouncing off your soul. Yeah. And then there's like I always talk about at Disney. Every single time I'm at Disney and I hear certain songs or I walk down like Main Street or anything, I'm like, I get teary-eyed. I get very emotional. Someday my prince will come. Yeah, it's just like that, like, because it's that feeling you get. Mm-hmm. And Jeremy's like, oh, there's actually certain notes that can like kind of manipulate you to feel something. Sure. And it's like, so like sometimes we'll listen to something with his daughter in the car, and we're like, and he's like, oh yeah, it's that note right there. But then it's like, but I don't think that's only that. It's like, I think there's also like, there's some songs that just hit you. And like, sure, like if you hear the melody of Someday My Prince Will Come and aren't singing the lyrics in your head, it's a different piece. Exactly, but when you hear Someday now you're picturing her standing by the well and all that stuff. Yeah. Or like there's certain songs that make me feel something. Like I used to listen to Rufus Wainwright all the time, and there's this song, I'm Not Ready to Love. And that song is that dark, gloomy, like, I mean, and it hit me emotionally, but it's like every time I hear it, I get into that mindset and I feel that, like, that whole feeling all over again. It was like, it hits you every single time. And it's like certain notes, it's like, I'm like, oh, wow, like that really just.
I forget why I became aware of him recently. Somebody, I think I might have, I want to say it was, maybe it was a movie or something. Mm-hmm. Like I think I looked up the closing song of Knocked Up, where it's like, that's my daughter in the water, and I want to say it was a Rufus Wainwright, the third song. I don't remember, but I became aware of him, and I think I have an album or something just saved in my Spotify for me to listen to when I'm in the mood for something new, and I'm gonna.
That's what sometimes I really like, that kind of gloomy, that kind of music. music, and then sometimes I want to listen to something a little bit more, something different. I don't know.
That's why it was kind of hard when Jeremy was like, "Is there anything you want to hear me cover?" And part of my problem was I was just like, I'm too anxious to give you something that's in your wheelhouse, and I don't think that's what you're asking me. So let me think real hard about something that I think your ilk would really do something interesting with. And for some weird reason, Jason Isbell's Elephant came to my mind, where I was just like, this is a really stripped down acoustic song, and I wonder if the theme of this song, where it's a dude who's basically sitting with a woman who's dying of cancer, and all they're doing is not talking about the elephant in the room. And I wonder if there's something in your experience that you could relate to in that would make this like interesting for you to play.
We're listening to that and we're like, man, this is fucked up. Like, we're like, this is really messed up.
It is. It's a really dark song, which I found out because of like a podcast or something. Somebody was talking to him and they were just like, let's talk about elephant. And I had to stop the podcast and go listen to it. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
I know, I made him, I'm like, we have to go listen to the song. And he's like, put it on, and he's like, oh, okay. But there's sometimes when like I don't really like, I like to know what I'm gonna sing. Like, I have things that I enjoy singing and that I know I sound good and that I know, like I know. And Jeremy's like, whatever, give me a song, and like he'll make it interesting. And one night we just did a thing where it was like we just get like, we have a couple drinks and we just do karaoke in the bedroom, like we'll just play it on the computer or something. We'll just have fun, just do the night together and do something goofy. And one night he was like, let's just do a song, like just pick the next song that comes up. And he picked a song and it was like having fun with it. And then he picked one for me. And I was like, I've literally never heard this song. I have no idea. God, I hate when it's windy and the car starts blowing. I'm like, I swear I'm a good driver. It's just the wind. But he played the song and I was like, I'm gonna sing what I hear out of the song. And it was funny because then he was like, he turned to me and he's like, holy shit, dude, like, what did you just sing? And it was like, I had made it more of this like kind of crooner, because I have more of a swingy, jazzy voice. And I was like, he's like, let's go listen to the real song and see, like, and it was totally different. But it was like, it was really fun to do something like that. And he's like, we need to do that all the time. Like, he's like, I like what you did with it just from like going through it. And then, so now I'm like, I'm getting more comfortable with just like let's just have fun, let's do it. Because I loved that night where we were doing karaoke or something and you were like, oh, do Martina Bride, like do this song, or Melissa Etheridge. And I was like, oh, I have not heard this song in a really long time. And I heard something come out of my mouth that I was like, oh, I actually really like that. So now I'm like, oh, I want to do something with that. Like, so it's just, it's like, it's nice to get out of your comfort zone every once in a while.
And weirdly, the complete opposite of the sentiment you're describing is why I pulled out of the Green Day cover this last week that Jeremy had asked me to do, because last minute, like, I listened to it 5 or 6 times, I wrote down all of the lyrics and the chords and everything, and then when it came time to do it, I'm like, I'm going to drift too far, because I don't know it that well, and I'd rather just be faithful to it. I'd rather just, like, do a version of it that Jeremy would be like, yeah, there it is, that's that song, that's how it sounds, that's how Billy sings it, because I'm just a mimic. Like, I really would rather honor what another artist has done rather than find my own way in it. But that doesn't mean that I can't get there.
See,
I'm
and
like,
I feel
let me do it my own way.
I think sometimes, like, when you do a version of a song and I'm like, oh, I did not expect that. And, like, you'll do a cover that I was... Like, sometimes I hear you just do it straight and you're just like, this is the song and this is how I'm going to do it. And then other times I hear you, like, you went a little different with it and I'm like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's really interesting to see what different artists will see in a song. And, like, that's something that we were talking about, actually, with the Talking Heads song, because we were going to do a cover, and, because he likes to do a lot of covers just to, like, practice for, like, his next album, just to, like, okay, can I do this next kind of sound? So, like, his next album's going to be more, I think he wants to do, like, an 80s something, like, just a lot of, stuff with friends of doing other covers and things, but
oh, cool.
But it's like he wants to get into that more like 80s sound, and I don't know where I was going with that, but
he's interpreting covers in certain ways.
So then we were doing a song and I was like, well, like, what are you gonna do with this song? Because, like, the way I'm listening to the song, it's like I'm listening to the classic version of it, but then I also started listening to this, like, kind of, was almost this like gypsy band, like or this kind of like not gypsy, but it's like a lot of banjo and a lot of like it's almost like a bluegrass kind of swing version of it. And I'm like, I like this. I've been having fun with this. And he's like, oh, that's not what the sound's gonna sound like at all. And I was like, well, I'm kind of interpreting it as like, and like I want to get a little bit like dirty with it. And I want to like, he's like, yeah, that. And so we're talking about that. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna sing it the way that I might get a little crazy with it. Is that okay? And he's like, yes, like that is what I want. He's like, you don't have to be, you know, I forget his name. It's like, you don't have to be him. Like you can sing it the way you want to sing it. And like,
I have a hard time if I know the song well enough, which most of those covers that I do, I've heard them hundreds of times and know them pretty well. I have a hard time not bringing the cadence of the singer that I'm familiar with into what I'm doing in some way. Even like I just did Cher's Believe, and I can't not put her in it in the best way that my voice can mimic what she does.
What, the auto-tuning?
I mean, even going, you believe, like I definitely do the lift, like the little, but yeah, it's not as crazy as auto-tune, but.
Oh, Cher.
Oh, Cher. But even just, it's one of those songs that when it comes back on, if you have the balls to turn it up and just kind of lean into it, you forget how good it is. Like the whole bridge. That I know that I can do this, and I know that I am strong. I don't need you anymore. She says, I don't need you anymore, what, 4 different times? What a great sentiment to lean into, lyrically. I don't need you anymore. 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 Like, oh, it's just such a... It's such a juxtaposed song because it's so empowered, and yet the entire chorus is, I can feel something inside me saying, I really don't think I'm strong enough. And then you think about, like, where did that come from in her? Or did a songwriter just throw that song at her? And on some level, I'm just like, how is she not thinking about Sonny? And how her whole life went up in smoke. And how hard it was for her to believe in life after love when everything just got taken away from her.
And I think that there's some really interesting lyrics. Like, yeah, there's a lot of... I didn't realize how much of those songs are not written by the singer.
Right.
It's like there's songwriters. I didn't realize that Elton John has like an entire like whole other person that writes all of his songs, and I'm like, my favorite song was not written by Elton John. And
but to his credit, he also writes a ton of them.
He writes brilliant songs. Like there's this song, I Want Love, and it's like you listen to it and you're like, oh, that is from his perspective. That is from like him wanting to, you know, be with somebody that he can't be with because of like society and whatever bullshit rules that were at the time. Yeah. But
have you seen Rocket Man?
Yeah. I loved that.
The way that they show how he wrote Tiny Dancer, I don't know if it's true or not, but my lord.
I'm sure a lot of it
it's good. I love that perspective that he's watching the man of his dreams, who has no idea that he's in love with him, walk off with a woman, and he writes about her. Yeah. That he's just like, it's almost like, I don't know, those songs where it's just like you're taking, like Jolene or something, you know what I mean? Like, it's his Jolene.
You know what's really funny about Jolene is that one, she said there was a little girl named Jolene. That's where she got the song, was she had little, like, there was a little girl, she got the name. Oh, and then there was a bank teller that was, like, beautiful, and she would, like, kind of flirt with her husband a little bit, I think, or something like that. And she's like, she took the two of those, and she, like, took that, like, turned it into this story that didn't actually exist. But she said, like, she just was like, oh, she could take my man if she wanted to. And it was like,
that's interesting.
She totally turned this into, I'm like, huh. Yeah. Like, I was not expecting that.
Netflix did a doc on her that's worth a watch. I only got about halfway through it so far, but, like, she's an interesting person.
She's a very fascinating person. She's a nice person, which is, like, hard to find.
Everybody says she's everything you want her to be. She's perfect.
Which I feel like there are, there's a lot of people right now where I'm like, oh, you kind of suck. Like, never meet your heroes, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, I don't really want to get to know, you know, and everybody, especially during quarantine, it's like everybody's been so vocal about every single opinion that they have that I'm like, I didn't need to know that about you.
I literally clicked on this clickbaity thing that it said, the title was something about Gene Simmons, you know, tells us something shocking about Dave Grohl, and I'm just like, here it is. here's the moment where someone's going to reveal that my hero is actually an asshole.
Ron is
and no
a
one
wonderful
knows it.
human being, and you're
And then it
talking
had nothing to do with that. He was literally just
clickbait, yeah.
some other quote. And I'm like, I guess he's great. I guess I could just sit here and keep loving him because he's perfect.
He's wonderful.
You should listen to their new single.
I did. Oh my
you?
god. I actually almost was
Shame.
I was about to send it to you, and then I was like, he's already seen it.
I did.
Although, I
and-
did think it was very repetitive, and we were just talking about that the other day, where I'm like, I don't like songs that are like kind of repeat themselves, or kind of like, I was like, that is not what I was expecting from the Foo Fighters, because it's so like stripped down and basic. But I was like, it's good, it's really good. But I was like, I love the layers of Foo Fighters. Like,
through Wasting Light. I struggled through Concrete and Gold.
I love Concrete and Gold, but
And this album, was having heard the lead single, I'm like, oh guys, you're really gonna make me work for this one, aren't you? Like, I can't just enjoy a Foo Fighters album. I gotta like conceptually get this piece of David Bowie. Ugh. Fine. I'm just annoyed. Oh, like, fine. Yes, there's a space for him in this world. There's times I'm in the mood for it. Never a time when I pull up Foo Fighters. Not once have I been like, yeah, I want some Bowie. Ugh. Whatever. Letting it be. Well, we did it. We did a podcast.
we did a podcast.
While
That was
we were
fun.
driving together.
It was so like random of like conversations,
Yes,
because I had
as they should be.
Yeah.
Always.
well, that's the good way to make conversations, is just to have, you know,
Yeah, just let it happen.
that's where my brain goes. And there's still things that I'm like, this guy's interesting to talk to. Like, so
We'll do another one. I haven't had that many return visitors yet, but my plan is eventually to have people start coming back. But I'd like to be in like the 300s before I do. I don't know. I just don't want it to be a show where it's just like the early Rogan episodes where he just had the same comics on over and
All
over
the
and over
time,
because
yeah.
that was just his world. I'm like, no, I'm gonna give it some time. I'm
You know,
gonna
there's-
let things happen in these people's lives and then bring them back on to talk about it.
there's some like podcasts that I listen to, like I like the Gilmore Guys podcast, and I listen to it, and it's like they'll have some people come on, and I'm like Jason Mantzoukas was on, and he'd be on like every single
He's
like
so
he was on
crazy.
so much, and I'm like, literally we're watching what was it, the John Wick, and I was like,
yeah.
it's Jason, and he's like, how do you know that random guy? And he's like, I was like, because he's on a Gilmore Girls podcast. But it's like, I just really enjoyed, you know, because it's like he liked something that I liked, and we felt, I got that connection. But he was on that show a lot, and I was like, I recognized his voice, and I was like, oh, what else is this guy in? And that was it.
Well, this is the bomb, and you're the bomb.
Oh, you're the bomb. Now we're gonna get checked by TSA.